I've told you in other stories how I started making wine before I was old enough to buy it. My Baptist parents didn't seem to mind. They were wise enough to recognize that my youthful curiosity was more interested in the process than in the end product. But that being said, I really didn't learn to appreciate wine until graduate school at William and Mary. And some of those departmental meetings were really little more than a bunch of silver-haired anthropologists gossiping in tight groups, sipping sherry. Looking back, I have to wonder how many of those were probably Episcopalians. Now, don't misunderstand, I did not become a wine connoisseur by tippling fortified wine with the intellectual elite, nor I become one since. But my increased exposure to fermentation in my youth made me unafraid, and I soon learned to distinguish between what I liked and what I didn't like in wine. Now, a few years after I was married, Stacia and I were building our first career at an historic house in Virginia. And twice a year we had to put on our tuxedos and our elegant smocks and attend a banquet and sometimes a dance for our governing board of regents from all over the country. These were women, indeed they were all women. These were women who knew what was what, and the wine selected for their consumption had to be the right stuff. Well, one year the vintner selected a 1986 Cabernet Sauvignon from Ingleside Winery in Virginia. It was a moderately priced, full-bodied delight. It was the best red wine I had ever tasted. I mean, every sip was a joy. So the next week, I went to the store and found and purchased 2 bottles and put them away in my wine storage rack, anticipating that they would improve vastly with aging. Well, 25 years and 3 moves later, I came across the bottles, and remembering how wonderful they were, and not wanting to experience the improved vintage alone, I carried the bottles to Virginia to share with my youngest brother, Rob, who is a wine lover. Well, we opened those bottles in great anticipation. We poured, we swirled, we sipped, and we gagged. This once excellent wine had, as they say, gone off. It was heavy and almost acrid in the mouth, and the bouquet, while not quite vinegary, was not that of a fine wine either. We ended up pouring it all down the sink. It was a regrettable waste of something special. And that, I believe, touches on the point Jesus is making in his parable in today's gospel reading. A parable of inactivity and waste. The tragic figure in today's parable is a man who was given money by his master to manage for him while the master was away on an extended trip. Well, the man, fearing his master and fearing the loss of the master's money, hid the money in the ground, and on the master's return presented him with his original coins. 2 other servants had invested their master's money and made more for him by doing so. Well, the master was quite angry with the fearful servant and called him wicked and sinful. But the man wasn't really wicked or lazy. He was just afraid. He was afraid to risk what his master had given him for fear of failure, for fear of losing what he had. And if we look honestly at ourselves, we can find this same kind of fear. Or is it really laziness? The same kind of spiritual sloth. The prophet Zephaniah uses a particularly apt comparison for people like that. He says, "The Lord will search out and punish those who rest complacently on their dregs." Or as my RSV Bible says, those people who are thickening upon their lees. These are people who hide or ignore their spiritual gifts until they're spoiled. Just like wine, which is left to sit for too long on the yeast sediment, becomes spoiled. What spiritual gifts? Well, each and every one of us is a living soul endowed with the powers of God, endowed with the powers of imagination, memory, reason, and will. And we're also endowed with a body and a mind, enabling us not only to interact with God's creation, but to care for it and to use what God has given us to create something new. Then when you appear before God, He will gaze upon your life's work and say, "Excellent! That's just the sort of thing I had in mind when I created you." And while nothing in creation belongs to us, everything has been entrusted to us to tend and to prosper, using the very gifts God has given us. Therefore, it's not right for us to hide away the Master's treasure. Jesus tells us that it is not our business to hide the image of God in which we're created, to hide God's mercy, love, and kindness from the careless people who crowd our life and scurry about us, to hide God's treasure from them so that they won't ridicule our hope. It is our business, rather, to put our minds, bodies, and living souls to turning a profit for our Master, to tending creation so it flourishes, to caring for everyone, the faithful and the careless alike, so that everyone might have a chance to encounter Jesus in us and live. I made a mistake when I simply hid away my bottle of wine, expecting it to become something better than it was. Those two bottles were excellent when I put them away, and they could have brought me and others a modicum of joy. But I put them away and ignored them for years and years, and I lost the joy I might have had, replacing it only with regret. So, what are you hiding? What is it you could be using to the glory of God, and you've hidden away for fear? Fear of it being inadequate, fear of personal embarrassment, fear of failure, or even fear of success. It doesn't matter what our abilities and resources are. We are privileged to have the opportunity to give them back to God with interest. But God expects us to be faithful in even the little things that He has entrusted to us. Jesus says, otherwise, how can you expect to be entrusted with anything greater? And the chilling truth is that even the little that has been given to humanity, our eternal and living soul, even that can be lost by those who forsake God's offering and live in fear. So let's think about what it is we are hiding. What it is in our lives we're spoiling, either in fear or in hopes of using it at a later time, a much better time. And let's think about why. Whether we're hiding ourselves because of fear or because of folly, let's seek God's guidance in understanding the value of the life He's given us and how we may return it in such a way the Creator will say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And for that, we'll say, "Thanks be to God."